So basically, Lombok, we are talking about the Lombok, why we are using the Lombok, right? And thing is that what is the requirement and why you are using it, right? So as we already know that you guys are already in basically in the development from so long time. So the why it is a requirement, if you really got that why we need that Lombok, then you easily you can adapt and you can understand it, right? So in every Java applications, we basically use the POJOs, right? Either if you are putting, you can say getting the data from the UI, or maybe you are inserting a data into a database, right? So majorly, generally at the UI layer, when we are integrating with UI2 or maybe sending a request from that UI2 or particularly to a server. So that model basically which we talk about. And also the same POJO which we are talking, we can use it at the data, which when we are mapping that particular object with the tables, right? So we generally use that all the setter getter methods as per the properties, right? That is the overall significance of the model, what we call is, right? That is we use. And so every time, whatever the entity we decided as a, let's say, customer account or something like that. So we create all the properties and attributes in the form of properties with respect to some certain data types and access specifier, correct? So every time you need to do a setter getters and everything, correct? But there is also if you, let's say, some point in time, if you wanted to change the particular field ID or any name or something like that, so it is really very pathetic, right? Another thing is that you need to add that constructor or twisting methods or something like that. That is also, otherwise it is just using a default constructor, default twisting, right? So there is a so much boilerplate code is basically we do, we generate. Generally, we have that these facilities into a Eclipse, but still we can have that much better use, right? So you don't need to do all these setter and getters. We control each and everything through a basically a annotations. Okay. So these are the basically so we can remove all the boilerplate code and we don't need to do that is the basically all idea about that like logger. So logger, you need to create that public static logger and then you will start that logger.debugger. You don't need to do, you can just use that simple annotations and use that logger variable or log variable. This is the all about that Lombok. So Lombok, project Lombok is mature library and reduce the boilerplate code. Okay, that is the basically, and project Lombok can be a great benefits. The library replaces the boilerplate code with easy to use annotations. Okay, so that is some features we will see, and also we will see that how we can integrate and how we can use it. Okay, so if you wanted to check for nulls, you can use at the rate not nulls like that. Okay, annotation which can be confused with the beans validations. These kind of validations also we can get it from the Spring Beans in the Spring as well, right? Generate the null checks for the setter. The check throws the null pointer exceptions if the particular annotated class field contains a null values, like that. And the setters, so like that you can get the setters. So once you are say specify at the rate setter, then it will be basically automatically assume that the setter is already available with you, right? So this code generates this particular kind of a code. Set employee ID, not null, final strings like that. So if this statement will generate this kind of a code, okay, and this code will be generated at the compile time. So this is all. So rather than to writing all this code, you are just writing this simple code here. That is all about that basic annotations from the Lombok. Now, generally we use that data. So basically, we also have the POJO, which we or that model we use for when we are working with either with any ORM tools or when we are integrating with you can say any database. So we use that ORM nowadays, but we basically use that POJO. So we created data objects, correct? So in data objects, basically we specify if you will just particular column name or that we specify that. So we can specify at the rate data basically. So there is a accessor matrix for getters and setters. If you wanted to get the data, read the data from like this. So you can generally remove all these boilerplate codes. So Lombok can take care of the generating these methods basically on the fly at the compile time. So setter and getters, private string column name. Whatever column name, you can just provide the column name basically like this. So this is the another use of that. So here you can also in the, let's say if you have a employee table, employee ID, employee name like this. So you can just write one simple getter and setter private string employee name. So you will get all the getters and setters. Okay. So that is the, you can just do it. Here also there is a one more annotations we can get. There are many annotations are there like log. So Lombok can take care of the logger declaration if you place the @log annotation or @SLF4J like this. So generally public static logger, and then you specify the logger factory dot get logger something statement you will write it when we get that log, right? To start that log dot debug statements and when we wanted to do it. But you can also do use that @log or @SLF4J so that you can directly, so that logger declaration don't require, and you can directly use that. Okay, so that is another annotation. Apart from that, there is other things like that data objects also contains equals has code to string methods, right? Sometimes you also override to string methods to print everything about that particular object, right? So this boilerplate could take care of annotating the class equals and has code and to string annotations also respectively. You can also do like this. So these annotations also you can specify and you can tell. Okay. These annotations use the attribute exclude if specified method should not be included in the logic. Okay. So this is the basically there are some much more added advantages from here, right? So these annotations causes Lombok to generate a respective methods, and they are customized so that you can specify field exclusion and other factors. So if you wanted to string, you wanted to specify some certain fields or something details, you can specify like that. Okay. And by default, any non-static and non-transient fields are included in the logic that is used to compose these methods. Okay, so non-static and non-transient fields are included here. So that is maybe you can understand if something is any particular time is not working, so you understand how it can be, right, like this. So majorly you need to understand, okay, and these setter and getters are generated each non-static fields within the class. So these are also basically it getter and setters also which we are talking about. It is for non-static fields. Okay, so that is the basically is all about some basic limitations. So you can understand if you are just column name like this, you can specify equal and has code to string. And if you are specify setter and getter also, you can specify like that, and this is the way it will look like. Okay. Then there is also one more annotations @data. So @data contains some multiple annotations. So you don't need to specify each and every. So it annotation can be used to apply a functionality behind all the annotation discussed so far. So @data will use that setter and getter to string equals and not null. All these things will be a part of that @data. So if you will use that only one single @data causes a Lombok to generate a setter and getters for each non-static fields and a class constructor as well as a toString equals and hascode methods. So it will cover setter and getters, constructor, toString equals and hascode. So you need to use a @data only, and you can see all 4 5 annotations will be bundled inside it. Okay, so that is all about that @data. Also there are, so let's see that basic example how the @data should looks like. So you can see @data public class like this, not null. You can, these things you can specify, but all that setter and getters and other things and constructor, and this will be a part of @data. There are some other annotations also where you can have that behavior for no argument constructors, arguments constructors also you can all argument constructors also. So generally, if you wanted to use that overloaded constructors, we generally specify multiple constructors, correct? So these constructor, and I'm not going into too much deep for a constructor, how it getting used and what is the purpose, because it is the purpose of initialization, and I'm believing that you guys are already aware. So all argument constructors, if you wanted to don't give any chance for any setters, generally we give a chance for generally any immutable objects, we give that initialized through a all argument constructors. If you wanted to just use for no argument constructor, might be also you can use it sometimes, right? So all argument constructor create a constructor for that class using the all the fields that has been declared, whatever fields that has been declared, and that constructor will be using all these fields. If the field is added or removed from the class, the generated constructor is devised to accommodate this change. So it is basically taken care by the Lombok itself. You don't need to do anything. This behavior can be convenient for ensure that the class constructor always accept the values for each of the class fields. So basically, it is basically that behavior. It is like that you don't need to write a constructor method, right? It is assumed that that constructor is available. If you are minimizing, removing some fields, then automatically the constructor will exist it, right? So the Lombok will basically at the back end will take care of all these things. So there is some disadvantage and limitations also. The disadvantage of using these annotations is that reordering the class fields causes the constructor argument can be reordered as well. So the reordering can make some problems. So that is you need to take care, which could be introduce a bug if there is a code that depends upon the position of the argument. So if you are just using in customer name and employee name, or maybe in company name, so if that getting exchanged, then it can saved into a in wrong fields and it can make so much problem. So the ordering is very much important. You need to take care properly. That is the basically a limitations. In other limitations, we have seen that it should be applied for all the non-static fields. Correct. Now there is a one more annotation, at the rate value annotations is similar to at the rate data, but it generates an immutable classes. Very important point. The annotation is placed at the class level and it invokes the automatic generation of getter and setter for all private final fields. Okay. So no setters are generated and the class is marked as a, so it is a basically only getters, and no setters are generated basically for class is marking as a final. And lastly, toString equals and hashcode methods are generated and a constructor is generated that contains the argument for each of the fields. So we in immutable class, it's a very powerful concept for thread safety. So many people can ask to you about the immutability concepts, default immutable classes like a string, and also how you can generate that immutable class, because these are the thread safe classes. So as it is required and it is expected, whenever you are generating any model or any basically Pojo, that has to be an immutable. So that is will be taken care by that value, so that everything is initialized through a constructor and the class marked as a final. Fields are also a private final and you will initialize through a constructor. That is all about that. There are some annotations, right? Building and objects also we can use that. Builder, we can use that. So at the rate builder produces a class, so that is a basically nothing but with reference to a builder pattern. That is a creational pattern we generally refer, right? So we have a different creational pattern like abstract factory, singleton, just something like that builder, where you can make a composite object based on your requirement. So that is also sometimes people can ask different type of patterns where you have used it. And majorly Spring frameworks thoroughly using that all these framework, basically the creational patterns. So that is you need to be aware where it is getting used. So Lombok makes it simple to create builder objects it much the same way that is enables easy Pojo creation. Okay, so at the rate builder produces a class that others that build a pattern. Okay, so we can use that particular builder, right? And inner builder class, it produce that contains each of the class fields, right? So here I didn't use that any particular code or something like that. So several validation can be also used with the builder. Okay, so that is also the annotation can be placed on the class, on a constructor, or on the method. Placing the annotations on the constructor produces the same builder object basically. Okay, like this. So we will see how these builders can be used here, right? Like this. So there is also a now also concept of easy cleanup. So Lomboks make it easy to clean up the resources as well. How often if you are either forgotten to close the resources, yes, this is a very important point, and these things will be generally catch up and make so much problems if you are not doing the cleanup. Okay, and these resources are written a lot of boilerplate code into trash catch blocks to accommodating that resource closing, right? So cleanup annotations, you no longer need to worry about forgetting and release the resources generally for closing of files, connections, and other things. So we generally try to use that into a basically in finally, so that we can close and all these things we can do it. So that is a very powerful you can concept, we can use it as a cleanup. Okay, so the cleanup is basically is you can use it, and you don't need to worry about it releasing the resources, closing other things like that. So the cleanup will be taken care by the Lombok at direct clean. So locking safety is also a basically we got that at the rate synchronized annotations we can use it. We generally use the synchronized keyword, right? Supplies to annotations we can use it, right? Any method, any block if you wanted to, we make that generally like this, and we make that particular private. You can say either we create that lock onto a particularly on this like this, or maybe so we make a when you any particular thread wants the lock on the particular field, in that case uh, we use that synchronized, right? So either we can use the synchronized keyword, or maybe we can use the synchronized block, and we can pass this object, or if we wanted to make any other threads like that. Okay, so locking on this, the annotation lock on a private field name called as a at the rate lock. So generally we use that this, right? When we are passing on this object, we basically use when we are passing into like this. So we can lock on this. We can also lock on any private field, that is a basically at the rate lock for a non-static methods, and at the rate lock is for static methods. So because we have two different types of you can say locking, right? Static also, and that you can say object locking and class locking, we have the different concept. I guess I believe that you guys are aware, right? So if you are have a multiple static field, so static locking will be generally applicable. If you have a non-static fields, so this class object level locking will be there. So you can use that, and there is a significant advantages rather than using this. Generally people use that any private field they declared and then use the lock on that. That is also people do it, correct? So there is a significant difference on it. So these things we can use it by the like this. Now there is another concept of a significant logging. So significant logging has already told you that at the rate log annotations, or also you can use at the rate SLF4J annotations like that. So you don't need to declare this like that private static final logger and logout factory dot log like this. So these particular statement you don't need, you can directly use that at the rate log, and you can use that log particularly, right? This is the way log4j, slf4j, and you can log dot debug, you can start writing. So this statement will be getting completely removed, right? So till now we have seen that majorly there is also a one more concept for val, right? So the val keyword can be used in place of an object type when you declared a local final variable, much like the val keyword that you have seen in alternative language such as the Groovy and the Jython. Right. So if you are declaring any particularly any array list here, right? So you can also use that val keyword like this. So there are some Consideration for using a val keyword first mentioned the previously, it marks the method declaration as a final. Therefore, if you later need to change the value of a variable using the val keyword is not possible. So there is a, this is a basically and also a limitation. So you need to understand if you are using that val any point of time. Okay. So, and it is already people are using like in Groovy and the Jython. So like that you can use it. Now there is also a D Lombok is also we have the utility, right? When you wanted to use that, so convert that your code into again back to a Java vanilla code. So whatever code we have used that for particularly for converting into a Lombok, you can revert it again, right? So D Lombok is utility we have that. Then there is also concept of a lazy, right? You can say that we have that concept for lazy and eager loading, right? In the same way, that same lazy concept we can apply here. So it is possible to indicate the field should have a getter creation once and then the result should be cached for subsequent invocations. This can be useful if the getter method is expensive as far as the performance goes. Okay, so this is a basically lazy loading, and this concept of a lazy is a basically very important with respect to performance tuning. So let's say if you wanted to populate a list of any items through the query, you need to access the website to obtain the data for your field for that first access. So maybe let's say if you wanted to fetch any data of any list, right? So it might make a sense to catch the result for subsequent calls. So rather than to call every time, we can also cache this data into an cache basically. To use this feature, private final variable can be generated and initialized with the expensive expressions. You can then annotate that field with the getter lazy tool to implement this functionality. Okay. So rather than one thing is that every time, so if you are getting without, and there is a concept of eager loading. So if there is no requirement, you are continuously, you are just loading and loading and loading. Correct. Another thing is that you need that particular data and then every time, but you can get the data and save into a cache. That is the basically two things you need to understand it here. So you can initialize that getter with the lazy is true. Okay. So that is the basically another concept here. So till now we have seen that this lazy initialization, okay, that is a very important D Lombok. Then we have seen well. Another thing is logger. Then we have seen that synchronization and lock. Then we have seen that cleanup. Then we have seen that builder. Then we have seen that data. Then we have seen non-argument constructor. Then we have seen at that getter and setters. Then we have seen that value for immutable objects. These are things are basically very important. Now let's go into a code. So basically into a code, so we will see that how this can be new share. Just I will just take you to code here. So basically here we can see that particularly so if you will see my Eclipse, right? So you can go into a help into a marketplace, and in marketplace you can search for a Lombok. Okay. So, and also there is a URL that is also I can right. So now sorry, it's not coming. So I mean, recently I have added here this one. Like this also you can install it. I am just giving into a paste here into a chat. Right. So this is the way you can, I have already installed here. That's why I'm not getting that. So this is the way you can just install it so that the plugin will be applicable and available. Right. Another thing is that you need to download that jar. So I can just Lombok jar download. So I have created a simple project. It's a Java project.